Hello YouTube, my name is Peter and today we'll be converting the Canon FD 135mm f2 lens from FD mount to EF mount using the Ed Mika FD to EOS conversions for use on your modern EF mount cameras. So along with changing the mount, we'll also be cine-modding this lens by declicking the aperture, dampening the iris, and adding a few things that will really make this lens shine for video production. First and foremost, I'll go through a couple of things I have here on the right. So once you do convert the lens, you'll need front and back cap, which I have here for EF mount. The reason I have this 77mm front cap is because I will be adding in this to the front of my lens, a step-up ring and cine ring that works with mount boxes, so it's 77mm fronts that all my lenses are. And then the last thing I will be doing is adding in this follow focus gear from followfocusgears.com that's specifically designed for the Canon FD 135 f2, and that'll just slip right on at the end. So I'll put those aside for now. The second thing, as I said, we'll be doing is dampening the iris using this solution, also from cine-mod lens. This is super secret lens grease. Basically, it's a camera-safe, lens-safe solution to dampen the aperture ring on your iris. You get nice, smooth focus pull, iris pulls. And then a couple other things I have here. This is everything that was provided from Ed Mika. So these four items right here. We have the mount itself. This is the actual FDN to EF mount. So this mount converts any nFD, which is a new FD, which is this kind of bayonet style mount, from nFD to EF. Works on all bodies, full frame, everything. Then we have the Ed bushing, which is right here, and that is what actually controls our aperture with this particular lens, and most of the telephoto lenses. There's an additional piece called the Ed link, which is this little guy right here which attaches in. I'm actually going to do this now just to show you guys how it's done. So the Ed bushing attaches to the Ed link attaches to the Ed bushing by just putting them together. It just slots in that hole nice and firmly. Kind of wiggle it in there, and once it's in, you're all good to go. Just making sure it's straight up and down. Great, so now we have turned our 4 pieces into 3 pieces because we've combined. So now this is all we'll need to control the aperture in there. And then lastly, there's I forget what this is called, but it's a Ed ring that just helps prevent more of a seal on the back of the lens, and I think it also might help prevent light leaks and stuff, but it basically kind of sits on your lens after you have put on the mount. Anyway, but I'm going to put those aside as well for now and focus on a couple other things. Now that I've sort of shown off the beauty of this glass, I'll put a lens cap on it, and I'll be working with it with the lens cap on. The back cap I'll actually leave off, this FD back cap, because I'll actually end up putting all my bits in there. I have a couple tools, just a regular old small flathead screwdriver that I use for certain things when I get down there, and then I have this JIS, Japanese Industrial Standard cross point type 00 screwdriver that works really well with these Japanese manufactured lenses, so that way when you are trying to move these screws that haven't been touched since they came out of the factory 30 years ago, you don't end up stripping them and ruining your lens. So I'll get started. So the way that we're going to go about this is every nFD lens, as I mentioned before, has the same kind of lock on the back, mechanism on the back. There are 1, 2, 3 screws, and I'll just get started by taking those apart. I'm going to keep them in my little cap right here. Okay, so let's kind of skip the step without explaining it, but basically once you unscrew those 3 screws, then I just took a little screwdriver and I just popped it underneath this ring right here, and it just came right out. That was what was holding everything together. I was holding the back together. Now we're down to level 2, which is the actual back mechanism that has the aperture control and everything. All you have to do is just grab it, this little piece right here, and just pull it on out. It might move around on you, but that's fine. It's just working its way out. Great, so that comes right out. I'm going to put that aside as well. Then down to level 3, as I call it, which has another set of 4 screws. In this pairing right here, just keep an eye out that this silver one is on the clockwise side, because we will be putting these back together in the same orientation later with the Ed mount. I'm just going to start by unscrewing all four. Okay, and then you just pull it straight up. Make sure I get these screws, save them for later. That I'll set aside as well. And the last thing I'm going to remove from this lens is this aperture control ring, or inner aperture ring, metal ring right here. That the way you get this out of there is by lining up this little notch right here, this little notch in the metal part, and that lines up with this notch that extends out from the plastic ring on the outside, and that just comes right out. And I'll set that aside. Now all of these four pieces I am actually just going to set aside essentially forever until I ever intend to convert this lens back. These conversions are 100% reversible, so I will save all the pieces, even the little screws and little bits that I'll show you later, just in case I want to put this back on my Canon film cameras or use it on another FD mount system, or I want to sell it and to a photographer that wants to use it or something. I'll keep this all together, but we are done with all these four pieces. So now we are almost all the way down the lens. This part right here is the aperture control ring, and at least what I'm calling it, the aperture ring. You'll notice how when I rotated it, you hear these clicks. That is because it's a still lens, and these have hard stops. We, as filmmakers, don't want that, so we want to get rid of them. We want to make it de-click the lens and make it work for video in case you wanted to iris rack within a shot. So the way I do that is actually just line this up. I want to make sure that all these notches and leaves end up lining up, and then you just pull it straight out. And it comes up. Then I'll set this aside for now. Oh, one thing you'll actually notice is I was going to flip this over and show you guys where the ball bearing, which should be right there, is to de-click the lens. I'd actually taken this lens apart once before, so the ball bearing might have came unstuck. It is sitting right here now in the divots which cause the clicks. But if it was here, all I would do is just pop it out. It just rests as it came out because there's no lock or anything. It just kind of hangs out and sits there. I would just grab it, put it aside. In this case, I'm going to grab it from the other side, and I'm going to set it down right here. And voila, we've just de-clicked the lens. That's all there is. Now, if I wanted to finish off the conversion, all I would do is slap this back on, put the bushing on, put the mount on, and be done with it. But we're here to do the full job, so what I'm going to be doing next is I'm going to be dampening the iris for really smooth aperture pulls using this grease from cine-mod lens. I'll be applying it actually with just a little tiny screwdriver that I have. Ed Mika uses a toothpick. cine-mod lens said use a really fine tip brush. I think anything that's not going to break off or bristle off, leave stuff behind in there. It's not going to mess with the consistency of this. And something that you can get very accurate with is best here. So before I start applying this, I'm going to tell you where I'm going to put it. I'm going to put it in 3 places. So I'm going to put it on the bottom there where our ball bearing was. I'll put it all around this ring. Just a very, very, very thin coat. In all 3 places, all I'm doing is just barely coating the thing, just enough to spread it evenly. I don't really want anything globbing up or getting thick or anything, because of a couple reasons. A, I don't want it too difficult to move, but B, I don't want too much grease in there that could end up spilling into the lens. It could get in the bearings down there. I want it to be as clean as possible. The second place I'll put it is on the flip side of this little iris sandwich right here, all around this where that metal piece is. And specifically, actually, when I do get to this, I'll focus on this metal piece because that'll be rubbing the most there. But I'll put it just a thin coating mainly on these 3 leaves right here. The last place I will put it is on the exterior of this Ed Mika Ed bushing that we'll be putting in to control the aperture later, and that is because it will be sitting in here and rubbing against these little 3 pieces right there on the outside. I'm still going to set this aside for now, and I'm just going to get started now going around this bottom part with a very, very thin coating. Okay, so I've just done a thin coating now around the bottom of that aperture ring. Now I'm going to do the flip side of this aperture control ring, and I'm going to hit these 3 leaves, kind of going around with a very thin layer. Okay, so just finished going around this ring. The one place that I did hit pretty significantly is actually this metallic piece right here. This piece controls Canon's auto aperture function from their film cameras. Now you can't use that function when using it manually, after you do this conversion. So there really isn't a point to keeping it, except for actually a very important point, which is the fact that if you do remove this lens and you end up rotating the aperture, you could actually move it past, in this case, past f32. So the aperture would stop all the way down to f32, and then if you moved it past, it would actually open back up to somewhere in the middle, like an f8, f11. And that's because that's where the auto aperture function usually sits. So I keep it in so that there's a stop, so that way when I go to rotate this all the way to one side, it just stops at f32, as stopped down as I can get. Unfortunately, that does mean, I think, that that there's a little more resistance based on the fact that this little thin metallic piece is rubbing against the inside of the ring right here. So I just put a tiny bit more grease on there, and I just made sure I really got I just really covered that thing fully. But again, you don't want to overdo it. So I'm going to put this on now, see how it feels. And the way you put this on, by the way, is once you flip it over and lay it down, you end up pushing in that aperture control button on the side, so that way that piece I just talked about actually retracts, so that you can push down on it and it'll go into place. Like that. Then I'm just going to rotate to the side so it sort of locks in, so it doesn't come unstuck. Yeah, and that feels pretty good. I'm noticing already a couple areas where it looks like there's a buildup of grease, so I'm going to just make sure that that I get those areas, I get the grease away from those areas. And I just want to go in and reapply grease to that one section where the metallic piece is rubbing. Okay, let's throw it back on. And that feels pretty good to me. Okay, so the last piece, as I said, is I will go all around this outer ring, save for this one little notch right here that I'll want to keep clean of grease, but I'll just do a thin coating all around the edge bushing. Okay, so this is a thin coating. Now, actually that's pretty easy to do because of this Ed link that I installed earlier. Now I'm going to install this and retain full aperture control. So the way that this works, there's a couple things. First, you'll notice here there are 2 posts coming out, 2 metallic posts. Those are called the goal posts. That's what actually controls the aperture, and that is due to the goal post moving the it's called a shark fin down there, which pushes on a little lever and opens up the blades. But basically what we'll want to do is capture that and then adapt it so that way when we rotate the outer aperture control ring, then we'll be able to move that goalpost. This is a little deceiving because there's actually 2 goalposts in here. There's a bigger one up here. Usually this is just a post. On the 135 it looks like it's a full goalpost. Now that we don't really need, we can just leave that aside for now. So the way we'll do that, so we'll flip this upside down so that way the Ed bushing is facing in the lens. And what we want to do is put the Ed link. What we want to do is put that Ed link between the goalposts as we move this down. And on the other side, that little notch that I told you not to grease up earlier, that is going to connect with this little outer notch on our aperture control ring, the same little notch that we took that silver piece out of earlier in the video. So they're almost at 180 from each other, so I think I'm in a good position where they are now. First thing is I'll just kind of stick this the Ed link in between the goalpost right here. Now the Ed link is securely between that. As I'm moving this down, I am finding that notch and making sure the two notches line up. I'm gonna end up touching the glass, but that's okay. I'll clean it after. And we have connection. So those just went together. The Ed link is securely inside of the two goalposts, and the notches are together. And now, as we see, we have full aperture control. All right, so now all we have to do is to make this thing work on our EF mount cameras is reinstall these 4 screws that we took out before, the 1 silver one and the 4 black ones. We're going to put them again in the same orientation as before. This time through the Ed mount, not the FD mount. So we'll line these up. Again, remember the silver screw is on the clockwise end, and I'll do the rest. Cool. So now check that out. This is a 35, 40-year-old lens that we have just converted now to EF mount to use on our modern day cameras. So this 135 is now ready to go and be used on digital cameras with EF mounts. Oh, last little piece is this Ed ring. These little rings that'll just kind of pop into place, and that'll just help stuff from getting stuck in there. Great. So now there's a couple more things. First of all, it's an EF mount, so we need an EF back cap. Secondly, flip the lens over. Now we're going to switch from the 72mm front to a 77mm for my lenses to all be completely uniform. This is again a cine ring from cine-moddlens.com, and it just threads right onto the front. That means you sort of lose your this neat little hood that's kind of built into the lens, but we'll just keep it built in. I'm sure you could remove it if you want, but I just keep it on. And thread that right in. There we go. Now that's in. Put the 77mm cap back on. And the last thing is adding these follow focus gears from followfocusgears.com onto the back of this. They just go right onto the lens, and all you have to do is, once they're on there, you sort of just wiggle them down. It starts to get pretty tight, but that's the point. We don't want them to go anywhere. Just kind of wiggle them on. And my goal is to generally get them like right in the middle of the lens focus ring somewhere. Eventually you'll probably want them all uniform, so they're all the exact same distance, but there you go. Now the focus gears are attached, so we can throw a follow focus on this. The second thing is we have full manual aperture control, and it's on the EF mount. So we are all set to go. This lens is fully cine-vised, as cine-vised as I will get it without rehousing it, and ready to be used on my camera and on your film shoots. Thanks for watching, guys. That's about it. This is the last lens of my set, actually, to be converted. Maybe if I pick up a couple more, now that I'm addicted to modifying these lenses, I'll of course, make some more videos every time I do a modification. But I hope you guys enjoyed the mods so far. This is the most telephoto I'll be getting, by the way. They kind of get more and more difficult, I think, once you get past 135 and into like the super telephoto lenses. But through edmika.com you can find these mounts for every single lens in the FD lineup, and he'll give you instructions on how to do it, and they're all DIY friendly. Now, if you don't want to do it yourself, you can totally go to someplace like cine-mod lens or another technician that'll service the lens for you, and they'll do the exact same thing that I did. They will declick the lens, do the aperture dampening. They will add the follow focus gears and front rings, and for a pretty good price. But if you're like me and you like taking things apart, then I hope you guys have enjoyed, and I hope this helps. Feel free to reach out with any questions you guys have. This has been a really fun process, and I'm so excited to have this full set of beautiful looking primes for my video work. And if you guys have any interest in doing the same, please shoot me a message. You can find all my information below, and I wish you guys the best of luck in all your future shoots. Thanks again for watching, and I'll talk to you later.